Here. And Mrs. Soshanek.
Here.
This time we'll take a moment of silence, and it's a good opportunity for you to silence your cell phones, please. All right, thank you. And Dr. Freeman, we're going to turn it over to you for review of the monitoring report.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As we had indicated to all of you, we have made some modifications to the report based on feedback from staff and the board about the organization and the contents. And so the pandemic did have some influence on that. The interruption of school, the interruption of data, the resetting of some data. So what you will find in your binder tonight is 6 chapters instead of 14.
Thank you.
We still have, the tabs are pretty self-evident. So we have the contents, and what we've done is taken the board's 14 goals. Those have been edited and changed a little bit by the board over time, but essentially 1A, 1B, and 1C are 1, 2, 3, 2A and 2B are 4, 5, and so on. 6 guiding principles with 14 goals, but we're going to present this in 6 chapters with an introduction, and we have a couple appendices that we've carried forward. If you see on the contents at the bottom of the page, summary and appendices, your appendices right now are attached in your board docs in the introduction with the introductory comments that I have. So there is, in addition to the introduction, a couple other PDFs attached, which are the 2 appendices. Those, when the final report is compiled, will be moved to the end. What we've decided to do is to add the summary after board discussion tonight and present it at the next meeting with any kind of additions or revisions that are necessary as a result of this meeting. In the introduction, it starts out with acknowledgments. Of course, a lot of people worked on putting this together. To say nothing of the entire year of implementation that requires all of the management team, teachers and staff, support of families, hard work of kids for a school year to be undertaken, but especially the executive team and all of their assistants, those names are listed, play a key role in putting this binder together for you tonight. We did refer back to the retreat the board held over at Westgate in 1819, where we did a 5-year look ahead, and the 5-year look ahead didn't look anything like those 5 years. So I teased some of my superintendent colleagues who had 10, 15, and 20-year long-range plans that they probably had COVID in the wrong year. And so everyone is revising long-range forecasting in addition to dealing with some of the changes in trends and demographics, some of which are challenged to adjust to, and some of which are very troubling, with the increase in student mobility, attendance dropping off, chronic attendance increasing, a lot more incidents, as everybody who's watching the news is aware of. Discipline and violence on the upswing in schools, I would think, largely as a result of the building anxiety in youth today. The next page is on the format, and it talks a little bit about some of the format changes that have happened so far and the format strategy that we've landed on for this report today. There's a lot of reference in the report to the pandemic, and I think probably in years to come, we'll probably reference pre-pandemic and post-pandemic data. But of course, those new trends, as we're just coming out of the pandemic, aren't really clear yet. And now the kind of tough nature of politics and inflation and everything else that's swirling around the public school system, not to mention the legislature opening up vouchers, I think there will be a challenge for predictability for planning for public schools in the years ahead. I've outlined then by guiding principles some of the things that have happened in 2020 where we addressed those goals in the first guiding principle. Once technology became ubiquitous, we separated out curriculum from mastery assessment to make that clear to everybody. And then another footnote in guiding principle 6 where we have continued strategic leadership training, building on the 2010 Cultural Consensus Building Initiative and expanding that. In Guiding Principle 5, the Governing Board initiating a communication study back in 2011, the same thing with the leadership goal in 2011. So just some touch points there for you. We had several pages on the monitoring cycle in previous years. I've condensed that down really to one page. Most members of the board are familiar with how these cycles overlap. So essentially, as we're talking tonight, we're finishing a governance cycle. When we come back from winter break, we'll be kicking off the next governance cycle. A lot of the work of governance is in closing the year and opening the year, evaluating how the year went and planning the resources for the year to come. While we're meeting tonight, school year is going on. And so the school level management team, all of the support staff and teachers are working through the school year to implement all of the resources and strategies that you approved and set in place last spring. That cycle will repeat itself again a year from now as the year we're in comes to a close. We collect data, the annual financial report, and everything else. So there's always a governance cycle and an implementation cycle happening concurrently, and they end up connecting year to year. And that diagram 1 shows the cycle in a circle, and diagram 2 shows it as it unwinds across the years. The body of that report just explains those with fiscal years, calendar years 2022, 21, and 23, how that fits together. For the 23 school year, enrollment, which is a huge part of our planning, has been dramatically impacted by the pandemic. We have a list of bullets on that page, I-5, of some of the things that have been very influential in steering the work of the board and the work of the management team as we responded to those. Record inflation has been a big topic of us, especially as we plan for capital program. The aggregate expenditure limit and its impact on staff last year was significant, and it looks like we'll be dealing with that again this year. The staffing shortage, which has grown worse year after year, all throughout the state and even the country. Of course, the pandemic, supply chain disruption, and learning to live post-pandemic years. Turnover in principals, reduction, over a decade of capital reduction, why the state really used the school system to balance their budget. Recessionary impacts right now, I think unemployment and mortgages are significant. They also were a decade ago. Elimination of full-day kindergarten funding has stayed with us. What we've done is through overrides, we've been able to reestablish that and work that into the budget. We no longer bring that question before the board. It's just kind of baked into our programs and priorities. But when we had to make that adjustment, that had a significant influence on, and obviously, if the state was funding that, we'd have more money for other programs. So the extended school year, having our first capital override, and some of the other changes in municipal planning and those kind of things are all mentioned there. There's a little bit of discussion on changes in enrollment growth. I would just say that in '22, we did not completely recover the enrollment we lost in the pandemic year, but we think that will be recovered this year. It's slower than we thought, but we have kids in new houses all over the place. I followed the bus over to the Lake and Ranch site, and it made several stops and let our kids off in all the new communities. So people are moving in, and I think that's going to be positive for the district. I did put a little bit of a paragraph in there about the predictability in budget planning. There has been some changes by the legislature to the original formula, other things that are happening. You can read that on your own if you have interest in a little bit of historical perspective. I'm going to be speaking on that next week to school administrators to try to add some historical context to the people who are new to the field and how those things have unfolded. So we've cut the introduction and the explanation of the cycle way back this year. If there's questions on the format and how we plan to proceed, Madam President, then I think we can hand it off to the first chapter to Dr. Haid if you're ready, unless there's questions I can answer for the board.
Any questions? If not, Dr. Haid, you are up.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight I have the pleasure of presenting Chapter 1, which covers Governing Board Guiding Principle 1 and District Goals 1, 2, and 3. So in 21-22, Littleton had multiple avenues for providing instruction to students, and we returned to in-person instruction with mitigation measures that were adapted depending on the severity of COVID in the county. We added an online learning academy for an additional choice for families, and there were times that classrooms and even grade levels were sent to online learning due to COVID exposure, and other times that teachers worked to reach all students both in school and at home through a hybrid model. Attendance tracking reflected this as teachers reporting present in person or present online. Teachers worked to align instructional practices based on outcomes from district assessments. They differentiated instruction to meet the needs of students, and in addition, students were identified that needed additional support through a continuum of services that included being placed in intervention groups or with a reading specialist or going through the problem-solving process. We also had services for special populations, including English language learners, gifted, and special ed. The information being shared tonight begins with the perceiver data on page 3. So that would be tab Chapter 1, page 3. The data did not significantly change between 2021 and 21-22. Teachers agreed for the most part that instruction is differentiated to meet the needs of our diverse population at 83.5%. Parent agreement remained relatively the same, that adults believe their children can succeed and that the school helps children be successful. In addition, students had high agreement that teachers motivate and challenge them and also help them understand what they're learning. They didn't have high agreement that they look forward to coming to school, but that's pretty much a historical trend, as you can see, and interestingly, teachers reported the same. So maybe they just wanted to stay in their pajamas all day this year, I'm not sure. So if we look at page 5, this is where we have a comparison between AASA, which is the new acronym for the state assessment. It was AZM2, and before that it was AZ Merit, and before that it was Ames, and so you get the drift, but it changed once again. So it is the same acronym as the superintendent's organization that he attends. So, but when comparing proficiency, there's a closer match between A's earned and state proficiency than other grades earned, and historically teacher grades have shown to be inflated when compared to state proficiency, but this is a historical piece that we've always shared and has the overlay of proficiency, That's, if you looked at it like a pie, the bottom piece, those are the grades, and the top skinnier line is the proficiency on the AASA assessment. On page 6, state achievement profiles are at the top, and you'll notice that letter grades have returned, and the district currently has a B average. We have 1 A school, 5 Bs, and 1 C. There will be additional information at the next board meeting on how these are calculated, and we're hopeful that a couple of our schools on the cusp will be able to raise their grades based on appeals that we're currently working on and submitting. As you'll notice from the chart, there were 2 years that grades were suspended. At the bottom of that same page, you'll notice that there are just 2 years of AASA math proficiency, and on the following page is ELA. We chose to show just 2 years because in 2020, state exams were suspended, and these are the 2 years in the post-COVID era. So the district not only had an increase in overall proficiency, as you can see, the district line is blue and the state line is gray. We had an increase of 8% with the district only having 1. So we not only had a greater percent, but we're also closing the gap between proficiency in the math content. This is similar in ELA at the top of page 7. The district grew 7%, while the state only grew 2. Let's see, I wrote this wrong way. In grade, so you'll see that. Underneath that, you'll see the cohort data. And this is always something that we have tried to show the board to. The test changes every year, but the group of kids stays the same. So you can see at the bottom of page 7, every cohort in math increased their proficiency. And from grades 4 to 5, they had a 12-point increase in proficiency. So typically, student groups increase proficiency from grades 3 to 4, but then maintain proficiency rates within a few points. So when we examined that, we thought that was encouraging. If you turn the page, the same data is shown for ELA cohorts, and 4 of 5 of these grades increased proficiency. When we look at grade 6, we had a drop, but so did the state, and the state drop doubled ours. So this is somewhat indicative of it could be a test issue rather than a proficiency issue, but we're looking into that. We were able to wrap up last year with an amazing summer school program that had most students in attendance in recent memory. Learning opportunities were robust with the addition of grant funding through the governor's office that allowed us to provide a full day of learning both in core content and extension activities. And with that said, that concludes my remarks for this chapter. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Ms. Vandewater.
Go ahead, Amy.
Go ahead.
This is just a general question because science is truly something I'm interested in. What was the state average for the AZ sci? Do we know?
We do not know yet.
Okay.
Yes,
I was just curious. Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
That's one of the pieces that's hanging on our letter grades as well. They haven't put the bonus points in yet. They're still reviewing data.
And the question I had is on page 7 on the math right there. For the 2021 and the 2022, do you have any idea what type of, I mean, that 2021 was part of the pandemic thing. Is that like not a full year of school? Is that like semesters, 2 semesters, 4 semesters in there? And compared to the 2022, do we know how much time they were actually in
Yes.
school? And
Mr. Nielsen, members of the board, in 2021, that was the year that we attended in 4th quarter. We were online previous to that, so we returned in 4th quarter, but we did work to have everyone tested, which was not something that all of the other districts did in that same year.
Good.
In 2022, we were in school pretty much, except for the exceptions where we had to send classes or grade levels or quarantine students, and so it was in and out.
Thank you, appreciate
Yes.
that.
Madam President. I think that's a worthy footnote to add to this, is that that 2021 data was more or less remote for 3 quarters and in person for 1 quarter. But one of the things that was important is we were asked to bring, we still had 400 kids whose families wanted them to stay online. And we brought them in and tested them in the cafeteria. And I think our test rate was like 98% or something. The state average was 85. So we made a really strong attempt to get assessment data on all of the kids so we would have something to work from as we move forward, which was atypical for the state, but also makes hard to compare those 2 pieces of data.
Just one other quickie there. Back on, I guess, page 3 and 4, the 2007, is that the year that that goal was put together? What's the 2007 reference right here? Goal per year?
I can't-
One of the things that we have done is added some questions to perceiver data as issues arose. So one example would be when the board took an interest in teacher satisfaction with professional development. We added, I think, a complement of like 4 questions to sense that. We've determined that some of these questions that were written in 2007 may not be as relevant today, and some may be. So one of the changes we made to the perceiver data format is to put in there the year the question was first surveyed. So if a question drops off, you won't see it anymore. But if we've added questions, we're going to try to mark the year in which they were introduced. That changes the amount of trend data we have.
Right.
So if there's a 2007 question in there, there is in a lot of cases 15 years of data over 16 years because we skipped a year. And so the 3-year trend, which we used to report, we didn't think was as relevant today given the last 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So what we've done is looked at the highest rating, the lowest rating, current year, prior year, and what the average is. And I would just say, like on that page 1-3, you could see current year is lower than the prior year for instruction is differentiated, but it's only 1% away from the mean. So even though it dropped, we had been higher and we had been lower. We're not that far from the mean. Of course, we'd like to get it back up closer to the high, but we think those range and central tendency measures actually give you a better idea given everything that's happened in the last 3 years to kids and schools and teachers.
Dr. Freeman, that bottom one, 2.1, there's no date on that one. Is that dropped out? Or
I don't know if it got cut off.
I'm sorry,
That
on
could just be.
3.1? Page 3.1. The
Yes.
last question there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that. It would have been in the original table, so somehow in editing or something, it got
Okay.
accidentally deleted. We'll get that corrected.
Thank you.
Any more questions? If not, we'll move on to chapter 2.
President Reyes, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Freeman, as referenced on page 1, Chapter 2 focuses on a safe learning and working environment created and maintained for students, staff, and the community, and students demonstrating appropriate social behavior, common courtesy, and good citizenship. And this chapter contains 8 strategies aligned to those goals. To summarize the management team's analysis on pages 2 and 3, at the Littleton Elementary School District, we take health and safety of our students, staff, and the community seriously. That is why it is our #1 priority. Schools faced unique challenges and needs as a result of the pandemic, but this also provided opportunities for our school district to address safety and wellness for students, staff, and the community in additional ways. Much of the data in this chapter is skewed due to the pandemic and only being in person for 41 days the prior year, but we were able to review trends and make decisions on how to best serve the internal and external school community to maintain high levels of safety and well-being and celebrate the growth and the opportunities in these areas we were able to provide. Relief funds were able to pay for safety items that afforded a sense of normalcy and security during these challenging times, as well as grant funding affording us the opportunity to have a social worker at each one of our 7 schools. Many surveys and scholarly reports, such as results of the National Survey of Children's Health across the nation, found more than 80% of public schools reporting stunted behavioral and social emotional development in students due to the pandemic, a 56% increase in classroom disruptions from student misconduct, a 49% increase in rowdiness outside of the classroom, a 61% increase in staff and student absenteeism, and a greater need for mental health and wellness services among students and staff. Nationally, a study shared that a number of kids ages 3 through 17 struggling with these issues jumped by more than 1.5 million, from 5.8 million to 7.3 million, or roughly 9 to 12%. But Littleton School District, as reflected in our perceiver data charts on pages 3 and 4, showed that Littleton teacher perception still continued for district safety in the 90th percentiles, with respondents stating that they have a safe place to work. 88% of our parents also continued to feel that their child's school was a safe place to learn, and 85% felt that discipline at the school was effective, fair, and consistent, with an increase of 7%. As referenced on page 5, Littleton had many things to be proud of in 21-22, and to just name a few, we had 4 nationally board-certified teachers. We recognized the hard work and dedication of our caring staff with employee recognition and appreciation events, which everybody really enjoyed. And we recognized and celebrated 8 retirees, and 138 of our staff celebrated anywhere from 5 to 30 years of service in the Littleton School District. So we continue to retain caring and qualified staff members. As referenced on page 6, we continue to focus on bus transportation safety. We had bus drills, training for our drivers. We utilized cameras and audio systems to resolve problems that were identified. We had monitors on buses where appropriate, and we celebrated students with bus awards when following expectations for ridership. Throughout the 21-22 school year, we had Zonar Solutions continuing to provide the district with a high level of security and confidence for improving safety and a peace of mind for our students, staff, and families within the Littleton School District. As referenced on page 7, in 2020-2021, the district was intentionally open and transparent with our school community with our district's mitigation plan. It was revisited and updated on a regular basis to align with the county and state health department recommendations so that everyone could make informed decisions about what was best for their individual families and students. As referenced on page 8, as school buildings plan to fully reopen in the 21-22 school year, Littleton implemented protocols for preventing or mitigating infectious disease transmission by supplying our staff and our students with PPE equipment, anything that was requested, a variety of gloves, face shields, surgical masks, K995 masks, even musician masks, sanitizing supplies, COVID-19 rapid response tests. And each campus has now an ionization machine on all of our AC units and backpack sprayers to sanitize our buses in between and after their daily routes. As referenced on page 8, during the 2021 school year, the District Safety Committee continued to update the emergency crisis plans to include procedures for a variety of scenarios, including lockdown, lockout, as well as evacuation procedures. We had routine safety drills conducted, drug dogs raised awareness across all schools, and a comprehensive threat assessment process was utilized to identify and resolve any perceived threats, maintaining order and safety. We also continue to work with our first responders to ensure open lines of communication and partnership with all of our Littleton practices. As referenced on page 9, the Benefits Department was dedicated to ensuring the health and well-being of our employees by offering the highest quality health insurance benefits and encouraging good habits for health and wellness. We had wellness programs for both our staff and students. Our Well Styles program was a system for staff to monitor, track, and encourage employees through a healthy reward system. The Employee Assistance Program was also made available to employees. We offered an annual wellness fair, which included but was not limited to free massages, biometric health screenings, vision screenings, information. If
you
you
make
missed
sure
it
I'm on
last
the
time,
Your list next time?
we'll make sure you get an invite. Information about fitness programs and also exercise classes. We offered shot clinics for our internal and external communities, which was very well attended. And we had 292 employees participating in the Well Styles Employee Wellness Program, and 104 of those employees reaching the maximum level, which was level 4. We offered mindfulness and wellness opportunities and exercises. They were seen across campuses at the start of collaborative meetings or embedded in weekly newsletters to staff as reminders to find a healthy lifestyle with work-life balance. As referenced on page 12, to support the safety and well-being efforts in Littleton, we practiced 3 powerful belief systems that we believe positively impacted student behaviors, courtesy and citizenship. Kids at Hope, Make Your Day, and positive behavior intervention and support. The district continued to provide educational opportunities dedicated to all students and the whole child through our student agency efforts and the All Things EQ character development resource. Schools supported and were provided to our students an opportunity to set goals, monitor their goals, reflect on them, and meet their individual learning goals, as well as develop their interests and abilities. Weekly character development discoveries included conversation skills, managing productivity in a team setting, positive self-talk, being kind and helpful, and making an honest effort and focusing on solutions instead of problems. As referenced on pages 15 and 16, while we need further analysis of the information collected for the new All Things EQ program during the 2021 school year, this was the first year, as well as continual data collection in the years to come, we have laid the groundwork for a successful second year. As these habits are still forming in the first year, the full impact of the program may not be observed in the early years, when teacher implementation is still in the early stages of use. Teacher email open rates of the All Things EQ program are an indicator of the level of implementation of the program. This is the baseline data year from 21-22. Parents had a high interest in All Things EQ as indicated by the parent email open rates, which was high at 45.3%. The Student Agency Committee's yearly work continued in the 21-22 school year to enhance our multi-tiered system of supports for character development and our continued approach to developing our educators' cultural competence and efficacy in achieving equitable outcomes for our students. The Littleton Student Agency Committee was made up of 34 staff members, including the executive director, district directors, site administrators, and educators representing all 7 schools. Our district staff was provided with an overview training on equity and diversity, and the committee collaborated around a plan to embed professional learning within our new teacher orientation and yearly staff PD plan for the 22-23 and future school years. The district is committed to providing equitable practices and supporting student character development. As referenced on page 17, we are very proud that the Littleton had the support of 7 social workers during the 21-22 school year. And in today's polarizing political climate, especially considering the focus of parent concern frequently landing on character development programs, we are proud to share data that our social workers supported 3,621 student contacts, 1,892 family contacts, and additional school support contacts through our social worker team of 1,117. In conclusion, Littleton School District celebrated interactions between students, teachers, parents, and our community partners as we continued in the 21-22 school year to develop respectful, collaborative, safe, and orderly environments, even having been through a lot since the last 2 years that COVID had emerged. Our data both supports the challenges we face and the opportunities we engage to continue to build productive, fulfilling relationships with those that we serve. This concludes my remarks for Chapter 2. If there are no questions, I will turn it over to Ms. Garrison for Chapter 3.
Is there questions?
I got a couple,
Okay.
if I may.
Mr. Nelson, yeah.
That being, on page 6, please. Just the term legal utilization, what does that have reference to as compared to property damage? Is that just strictly buses? Is that damage in schools? Legal utilization?
Member Nielsen, that is our prepaid legal usage. That would be contract reviews, anything that we would need a lawyer for in order to work with vendors or
Okay,
employment contracts, employment issues. It's a blanket number that
Okay.
deals with all those issues.
and then the property claims, does that have buses or school damage or?
That's gonna be all the above. That's,
Okay.
I think in 21, 22, we had a lot of those TikTok challenges that we had, some furniture damage, that would be included in that number as well.
Okay. Next page, that mitigation chart, that is the one from that time period and not the one that we presently use? Does that reflect history or does it reflect current status?
That's from the prior year,
Thank you.
and we changed it a couple times.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we had the historical aspect of that. And then just one other one here. Page 12, on the suspension data. The percentage there, what is that, I missed with the percentage. So when, in 21, 22, the summation and total is 545, but the 9% is reference to what?
The 9% represents the total population.
Okay. We know what 22, 23 looks like, yeah. No, forget that. Thank you, I appreciate,
Trending up.
yeah. I appreciate that. Those are just the questions I have, Madam President. Thank you.
Other questions? I just had one, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but it's on page 211, and it's regarding our annual inspections. Do you know why, I understand there's different boundaries for our schools, but do you know why Phoenix only requires one inspection and Avondale requires, we have one a year? When, looks like Phoenix only requires us, and Tolleson only has every 3 years? Any idea
President
why?
Reyes, I don't know the answer to that, but I can get you that for the
No,
next
I
meeting.
would just think if, I mean, it just seems so, it doesn't make sense, but thank you.
Yeah, it may just relate back to staffing issues at the cities, I don't know, but the, while a second set of eyes is helpful, a lot of times, I'm thinking 1858 was the last time there was a schoolhouse fire. So,
To me, it's disruptive. I mean, if you need, of course you need them, there's no question, but, I mean, it just seems kind of unnecessary, maybe. Sometimes, yeah. All right, we're ready to go with chapter 3, unless there's questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to page 2-15, looking at the threat assessment data and the background you gave on the threat assessment data, and then also looking at, you have the, when you talked about the positive behavioral interventions and the social workers, that whole topic, is there a team that supports that, like for that follow-up, or is it just the social workers? How is that supported?
President Reyes, Member Contreras, thank you for your question. Yes, every school has a threat assessment team that works with an individual child to build a safety plan, work with the family, whatever the individual child's need might be. We have 4 different types of threat assessments, and we go through that process, and depending upon the outcome of that, we provide the child with a plan. It could be the administration, the teachers, the social worker, the nurse, the community, the parents. Takes a team to provide the safety plan for that child.
On page 2-14, the alternative to suspension program, it says that we've paused it, it's on hold due to staffing issues. Is this like continuing on? I mean, I understand we have staffing issues, I get that. Are we gonna come back to this?
President Reyes, Member Solchenek, thank you for the question. Yes, it's actually up and running right now and staffed. It was just due to some of the limitations we had during that time.
Perfect, thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move to chapter 3.
Madam President, Governing Board, I am going to start on the first page in Chapter 3. Chapter 3 takes a look at Principle 3, Families as Partners. In this section, there are two goals. One is to have families as meaningful partners with the schools to support the success of their children, and the other is about effective, professional, and courteous communication between the home and school. The strategies listed include monitoring how parents monitor the progress of their children, and if they make program selections, or as we call it, choose a school during school choice each year. We also look at two-way communication, being timely and effective, and work with the parent groups that intentionally meet to support engagement. Of course, great customer service is at the heart of what we do, so we continue to seek feedback regarding service from our stakeholders. Recognizing the important role that parents play in the success of their children led to continued efforts, of course, to build family partnerships. As you are well aware, the last 2 years looked like no other. Out of necessity, we continue to develop new ways to engage our families, and as the mitigation strategies changed, so did how we interacted with people. You remember each month we would come here and change how we were interacting with the community. Turning to page 2, the perceiver data showed a drop in teacher agreement that families stayed involved. Although there was a 10% drop, agreement was still above our low and even the average, as Dr. Freeman mentioned before, over the past 15 years. Look at the difference there. On the next page, page 3, we saw a decent increase in parents agreeing that schools were safe and orderly as we welcomed students back into the buildings. Agreement that schools were safe and orderly grew by 15.8% to better than 88%. I mention that because I find that significant following a pandemic and the recent school tragedies that have been in the news. It's kind of an encouraging indicator there. There was a significant drop in families feeling welcome when they entered the front office. So we look forward to reporting increases in this question as plexiglass comes down, masks come off, student performances start back up, sports return, and we start to increase volunteer opportunities this year. There was a drop in students saying they heard their families saying good things about their schools, but again, look at that data. The current data is well above the lowest ratings we have seen over the years. At our lowest data point, the students were only giving us a 48% agreement, and last year we had nearly 80. So not too alarming there. Turning the page, on page 4, on the top of that next page, you will see a chart of logins to Parent View. During the 21-22 school year, the district tracked an all-time high of 56,806 entries into the parent portal. This was encouraging to note because we put much effort into giving parents more reasons to log in. In the portal, parents have always been asked to monitor grades and attendance, but we were not satisfied with the engagement we were seeing. My office worked with other departments to develop additional reasons, and throughout the year, we communicated the new initiatives. We started with targeted communications with activation instructions for parents we could see that had never logged in, had not activated their accounts. We used a dedicated email address for questions. We trained front office support and even made many phone calls to support activation of the accounts. The first year we opened with students in remote learning, we placed the parent-student handbook in the portal because we didn't have the kids to take it home, right? And when the parents did the initial login, they would have to acknowledge it. We were also placing the quarterly report cards in the portal when we lost the ability to have students carry the report cards home. Now, teachers also use email and/or Remind to send parents the report cards. And when we welcomed the majority of our students back into the classrooms last year, we continued to use a combination of all these strategies, trying to make sure that the parents had the information. And we could now last year we could send the printed copies home so our families had the options to receive the information about this important academic progress. We let families know that demographic information, emergency contact, and even over-the-counter approved medications could be viewed through the portal. These were new initiatives, new information that we were pushing out there. We also opened up the portal so that parents could request their school this year during the school choice window last year. So we put that in the portal too, anything we could think of to push parents there. In order to promote efficiencies in our transportation department, we required our families who qualified for transportation to request to be routed through the portal. This was a significant change, so the communication campaign was rigorous as we launched, you may recall, Register to Ride. where we wanted to know if your child was eligible, were you going to be using the bus? And we did see new families entering the portal to make sure their children were routed before this school year began. Another new noteworthy initiative was allowing parents to use the portal to register for summer school. Not only could parents register, but this allowed us to use the student information system to track enrollment, schedule students, and take attendance electronically, which was another first for our district. Staff feedback supports continued use of this process should we continue to offer a summer session. So I suspect using our student information system to support summer school will become a standard operating procedure. On page 4, the next chart you will see is the school choice responses received. Each January, in line with National School Choice Week, our families are invited to declare their schools for the following year. Historically, we have kicked off school choice window with a large-scale in-person event right here at the district office. Last year, being careful, we allowed parents to make their choice again through the portal, right? Trying to push everything through the portal. We also heard that the high school has expectations about using the portal. And so we're trying to train our parents for high school as well. We allowed parents to make their choice, and then many school leaders put forth an extraordinary effort to reach an all-time high response rate. The chart shows that we had 2 academies get a response from every family, which had never happened before, and another 2 come very, very close. Might have been a little competition running there, but we'll continue to use multiple strategies in the future to keep our families aware of our program options they have right here, and of course, we'll keep reminding them that there's no need to shop elsewhere. We have plenty of choice right here. There are some interesting things noted on pages 5 and 6, but if you flip to page 7, you will see another new initiative mentioned. The district is always interested in improving customer service internally and externally. Public office employees met bi-weekly throughout the school year to look at standard operating procedures and best practices. We found a lot of topics that we needed to revisit after the pandemic and reboot. As offices reopened last year, the district used the service of secret shoppers. The secret shoppers were given questions and scenarios. They tracked responses, experiences, feeling tone, and even organization of the office as they put our front offices to the test. They used a rating system, which helped us determine topics for future meetings, right? Professional development, where do we want to go, as well as support recognition of outstanding experiences. As always, we'll continue to use strategies to strengthen our partnerships with our families. If there are no questions, I'll turn the time over to Dr. Haid for Chapter 4.
Page, I'm sorry, 3.5. Just a question on Remind, but I think this one would go to all of them. Do we have emails for every family or phone numbers for every family? Is that required? I mean,
Madam President, Mr. Nielsen, upon enrollment, absolutely, you must give us good contact information.
Okay.
It is sometimes a struggle to keep those current, but we have lots of systems in place which help us do that. For example, you'll see some data in there about the auto dialer. When we have failing calls, we watch those failed call numbers and we go back and follow up. Email wasn't the norm for, say, our 8th graders who left us in the last few years because it wasn't as common to ask for that. And so, yes, it is asked for upon enrollment, and it's very rare that parents don't have an email address anymore. But we also have a system in place because we send out, as you know, you guys receive them, the mass email through Constant Contact. When we have failures there, we track that too and try to go back and either get an updated one, or sometimes when you see it failed, you can see it was a typo in the entry. And so we're able to correct that or make a phone call. So it is something we really pay attention to because, you know, when Dr. Freeman first came, he had the same question for us, like, how do we have so many phone numbers that are not good? So we really put an effort into making sure that the contact information
and
we
I
have.
think that's where I was going with this.
Right.
I deal with the 18 to 30-year-olds, and half of them and 3/4 don't even use emails. And when you text them, if they don't recognize the nail or it's one of their friends, then they don't even answer it with it. I just want to make sure that we're getting the message out and that the families are being contacted.
Multiple ways, and I'll talk about that in my next chapter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, Chapter 4 is next. This also deals with guiding principle number 4 and district goals 8 and 9, that we attract, develop, and retain highly competent staff, and then employees work in a collaborative manner to provide a quality educational experience for students. Last year's challenges continued with recruitment and retention. Travel was still restricted as COVID mitigation measures were still in place, and the teacher shortage not only affected Littleton, but the state and the nation. So I'd like to start with perceiver data on 4.2 and 4.3. This data did change significantly in some places. The drop in agreement that the district is a highly regarded place to work was not near its all-time low. However, agreement decreased by 18%. Professional development is still an area that we struggle with, as the need for more differentiation due to the wide range of experience of our teachers poses challenges for the limited number of staff that are tasked with providing professional development. And this is also reflected in teacher agreement when asked about Early Release Wednesday. The teacher responses in this section reflect what national concerns are, and that they are overwhelmed, teachers are overwhelmed, underpaid, and underappreciated as a profession. So I'm not exactly sure that we could attribute this all to Littleton, but probably just as a whole. I know in the board updates, you have gotten quite a bit of information from the Arizona School Personnel Administrators Association that conducts annual surveys, and in some later pages here, I'll share some of the data where we are definitely in a much better place than other places in Arizona. Now, the good part of this is that teachers, or parents and students, continue to be satisfied with our teachers, and they report that teachers work well together. So their stress doesn't appear to be trickling down to students. So I'd like to start with page 4.4, 4-4, with the retention rates. We have 5 years of retention here. You'll see it was at an all-time high in the last 5 years in 2019, 2020. You might remember that that was the year COVID broke, and we went under quarantine and isolation in March, and a lot of people were uncertain about the future. It dropped slightly the next year, and then last year, our retention rate was 82% of contracts issued. Now, the board approved contract signing incentives to help get our contracts in early, so we would know what we needed to fill. And I would like to report and thank the board that 82% of the teachers that returned, of those, 94% of them received the additional incentives. So that helped, and that is a good piece of data as we look to ask for that again in the future. So the next piece I would like to highlight is on the same page, the percent of highly competent teachers. Now, years and years ago, you'll remember highly qualified, and we got beat up every year on the audit that we didn't have 100% highly qualified, and that went away. But now we have to report the number of appropriately certified teachers. You will see that the past year we dropped to 83%, also not an all-time low. Our all-time low would have been 2007, 2008, which it was down in the 70%, somewhere 75, 76%. However, we decreased, but the state reported that only 50% of the teachers were appropriately certified in schools, and so that means that we exceeded the state by 33%. So we will continue to work on programs with getting teachers appropriately certified, which you have heard about some new initiatives with that. So I wanted to share that. Also, the last piece that I would like to share is 4-5 on the wellness program, and a little bit of this I made fit. You're probably going to hear some of it in a couple other chapters, but we worked really hard to provide opportunities for our staff to be vaccinated after COVID was a thing. It was controversial, but we tried to stay as neutral as possible. We also provided opportunities for the community and got a lot of feedback from the community that said, well, if the school says it's okay, then it is okay. So as you can see from the chart on that page, we ran 7 clinics, and between staff, students, and the community, there were nearly 1,000 people that received vaccinations and boosters for COVID-19 and the flu. That is the end of the chapter that I have, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I believe this goes back to Ms. Chizzy. Garrison, Dr. Garrison, Ms. Chizzy, Sue.
Why, thank you. Madam President, Governing Board. Chapter 5 examines Principle 5, a meaningful involved community. The Governing Board has 2 goals, which include actively including the community resources and groups in the educational process and actively promoting programs and initiatives in the community. Thank you for allowing me to share a few highlights from this chapter. I will start with the perceiver data on page 5-2. We saw a dip in agreement that teachers knew where to find information about community resources. Not really sure, but this could be due to the number of new staff that joined the district. But agreement was again well above almost double the low point of the data. Staff feeling informed was also lower, and I would attribute this to the amount of information being shared with higher needs as many were as we were transitioning from the pandemic. Looking at the parents, 86.6% of parents said they were informed of programs and initiatives, and that matched our low point in the data. But it's kind of nice to say the low point in the data was 86.6% agreement, which is why I pointed out it's a pretty high low point. On the next page, 5.3, students reporting that they hear about activities happening in the school and being told about good things people in our schools are doing both had an all-time high in agreement. Interesting that students were reporting that. I'm going to start with a few comments about the Boys and Girls Club noted on 5.3. As you are aware, the Governing Board reached an agreement to bring the club to this campus in 2018. During the pandemic, the district was fortunate to have this partner with dedicated staff that was able to serve our community and stay open. The club worked alongside of us to become familiar with our digital curriculum so they could support learning. They grouped students by grade level, had our class schedules and login information, and helped kids stay connected to their teachers. Once schools opened, they moved back to operating an after-school program. As typical, they used our calendar to add many non-school days to their calendar to support our families. They share a desire to help keeping kids moving academically. They had what they call a power hour, during which they supported students with homework and partnered with the district to set expectations for safety, whether that was aligning with our current mitigation strategies or talking to kids about bus expectations to support safe and efficient transportation to the club. So after school, we are fortunate enough to be able to get kids transported here to this site, to the club. The club was unable to staff before school care, which they did provide before the pandemic. It was unfortunate, but like many of businesses, like many places of business, they experienced workforce challenges. So last year, there was a need to renegotiate our agreement to add square footage to support their enrollment and allow for additional space. So they like to group the kids age appropriate and move them into different rooms. So we were able to give them a little bit more space, renegotiate that lease. Moving on to page 4. Last year, this boardroom that we're in right now was upgraded to support our virtual meetings. As you may recall, during the pandemic, we began streaming our meetings. This meant viewers could see meetings live on our YouTube channel. Our meetings were also recorded and shared, so those who choose could watch it anytime. The technology in this room doesn't only support efficient and transparent board meetings, it was also used for professional development and internal and external group meetings. Because of these upgrades, it's now easier for presenters to present from here, or they can present virtually, and the same is true for the audience. Participants can be in the room, or they can participate virtually. The next thing I want to point out is also on page 4. Our parent liaison continues to support families across our community. It is the parent liaison who identifies our families as homeless and connects supports to some of our families most in need. During the 21-22 school year, we had 169 students identified as homeless, which is up from the previous years. But it's not a great comparison because throughout the pandemic, connecting with families, especially with those most in need, was challenging. It is commendable that our parent liaison distributed uniforms to 505 students. And highlights of her work last year included delivery of our early literacy classes and coffee talks virtually. She made sure our families were included in a back-to-school event at the Grand Canyon Community College and continued to work with schools to identify families to participate in holiday events. And as they started back up, we wanted to make sure our families were included. As organizations began to bring back in-person events or offer hybrid options, she made sure that Littleton had a chance to participate. She took the lead on our partnership with the VITA Group, which supports free tax preparation for our qualifying families. Also on page 4, you'll see a chart capturing the snacks program participation. Last year, our partnership with the Homeless Engagement Lift Partnership, otherwise known as HELP, meant that our homeless students could choose to receive snack bags to take home each school day. The program ran from September through April, and from the chart, you can see the program continued to grow. The parent liaison made individual contacts to explain the program as participation was optional, and she reported that our families who participated appreciated the help. They could grab a sack each day as they left school and take it home. The next item on page 4 captures the extraordinary efforts made to feed the community during an extraordinary time. You may remember that at the start of the pandemic, the district started handing out meal packs curbside. Then, thanks to Southwest Food Service, dedicated bus drivers, and our chief operations officer, the district managed to distribute food in cafeterias, at delivery points throughout the community, and even at times door to door. Those involved in handing food to families had story after story of appreciation, and much of it was captured on social media. You could see a lot what was happening out there. On page 6, you will see the Civics Matters Arizona program noted. You heard about this last month, but I just wanted to point it out again because it was so incredibly cool. The Arizona Cardinals partnered with State Farm to send students and teachers on an all-expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C., and Country Place was fortunate to have students and a teacher participate in this awesome experience, which included transportation on the Cardinals jet and tours of many significant places around our nation's capital. On page 7, you will find a narrative about Dr. Freeman's civic engagement from last year. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but I just want to say our superintendent continued to advocate for public education. He frequently attended community events and advocated for issues he believes are good for kids. He offered his perspectives on implications of education policy ballot initiatives, and he played a key role in advancing the state budget for K-12 schools. You will see other examples of ways he served on that page. Another point of pride for our district was when Dr. Freeman was awarded the Raymond Sterling Callis Leadership Award. This prestigious award from the Arizona School Administrators is not even given every year unless someone has been deemed to have made exceptional contributions to leadership in the state. So there's a nice read there. The work of our public information officer is evident throughout Chapter 3, the one that I just previously discussed, as well as this one. Our PIO, as we call him, worked closely with the superintendent's office to cultivate relationships with local media, law enforcement, and various organizations. He maintained a survey schedule, and I'm just kind of summarizing the things we're at the end there. Survey schedule to solicit feedback from our stakeholders to get that two-way communication. Headed up social media, marketing and branding efforts. He worked with the administrative team to provide opportunities for parents to send and receive information, and was a major player in efforts to build a strong sense of community, especially as we tried to stay connected after the extraordinary times. Any questions?
I just got one quick one back on your parent liaison support, and maybe it goes back to 5.5-2 on where to find information about community resources and groups at my school. I was attending from my other hat, the city council meeting this morning. It's an interfaith program. They had about 25 different nonprofits and religious groups in there, and they're looking for opportunities to partner with schools, to partner with whatever it might be, partner with the Resource Center from Avondale, just to give some help. There's a mentor program, one of the people we're talking about today. They look for male mentors in the West Valley because there aren't many of them over here that can come in and spend 4 to 6 hours with individuals over a monthly basis. And I just don't know how we would get that information to them, or if they already know that there's quite a bit available within the city of Avondale for teachers to get things. John was there this morning. I don't know if he stayed for the whole time, but there were, I don't know if you've got others that want to come, but there's just a marvelous opportunity to find out what some of the other things are there. So those teachers, I mean, I'd be willing to bring something in on the Resource Center just to show all the things there available.
Thank you.
Is that across the river, just south of, like on Felix
Yes,
Way?
yeah. They've got 65 different organizations that come in there, and like I say, the other ones that were there this morning are just looking for opportunities to share what they have with needed. The homeless is one of the ones we talked about this morning, particularly with students and particularly with young men that need a father in the homes or whatever else. So I will track down some information on Resource Center and get that here. And
We've been trying to steer some groups to that big meeting room just to help make people more aware that it's there.
Great.
It's kinda tucked away.
so it was in the city council chambers today. We won't have any in November, December, but January 24th is the next one. I think that's the last Tuesday. And it'll be back over at the Resource Center there. And it's just, if you've never been there, it's just to go through, and if you want, I can see what to do about setting up a tour. But it's just the amazing thing that they have with all kinds of different resources.
They also just hired a homeless outreach team that actually goes to, if they're advised to know where, and reaches out, they'll go out to them where they're under a tree in the river bottom. And
That's our family with the
Yeah.
fire today.
oh, yeah, and again, I can't emphasize how good of a job. So maybe there's some partnering we could do, if nothing else, just to get the word out. They have hydration stations. They find snacks if you're hungry. And I think we're doing some kind of disservice if we're not finding a way to target and work with Avondale, because the resources are just right there. So
Right.
maybe we can find a way to,
Connecting is always the challenge.
yes, connecting is probably, and that would give us resources as well.
And that was the purpose of this meeting today, is get other people connected with
Yeah.
other people and just,
And
see
those-
what's available.
Yeah, the homeless, the groups that work there, they know of so many resources. It's mind-boggling. So, and there is even transportation that we will send them to different places if it makes sense, if it's appropriate. So I do encourage you to go look. It's an amazing place that does amazing things for people.
Thank you. Noted.
So with that, no more questions, we'll move to chapter 6.
Thank you, President Reyes, members of the governing board. Chapter 6 of the Monterey Report deals with Principle 6, highly effective organization. This year, Chapter 6 includes the District Goal 12, which is leadership and core values are modeled and monitored at all levels of the organization. Goal 13, the district effectively aligns people and programs to match the need and resources of our growing organization. And Goal 14, people and programs are recognized for their excellence. The management team used 10 strategies to interpret this goal, and they are listed on the first page of Chapter 6. Page 2 provides a management observation and analysis of the 21-22 school year with regards to maintaining a highly effective organization. There is analysis of the programs the district utilizes to train staff in leadership, the funding the school district received, and notable projects started in this fiscal year, as well as how the district recognizes students and staff for their amazing work that they do on a daily basis. FY22 saw the district transition back into an in-person learning environment. It also saw an unprecedented amount of federal dollars being accessed by the district. The district was awarded the ESSER 3 funding and was able to make large investments into maintaining programs like one-to-one devices for students that was accomplished the prior year. Page 3 and 4 have the annual perceiver data that accompanied this report each year. The district is reviewing the data to determine if the pandemic had an impact on the teacher, parent, and student responses, or if the district can expect this to be a new baseline for the coming years. Page 5 begins with the strategies and programs the district uses to support leadership and culture. The district utilizes programs like 21 Keys to High Performance and the Lifestyles Inventory Guide created by Pacific Institute. The LSI diagrams on the right-hand side of pages 5 and 6 show the district's evolution over time. 2009 was the first iteration of this diagram and measures the leadership styles represented in the district. The goal of the LSI guide is to assist the district in identifying leadership styles, both good and bad, and developing strategies on how to leverage the good while reducing the bad. These diagrams assist management in developing strategies to shift leadership styles from defensive, which are the green and the red shown in the diagram, to constructive, which are the blue. Page 7 begins the analysis of the revenue and expenditures in the district in FY22. You can see in the chart labeled total revenue by fiscal year, district revenue was up significantly in FY22 from state and federal sources. The main reason for this is the ESSER allocation. Littleton received money from the federal government and also received additional state funding to help combat the effects of the pandemic on academic growth. Page 7 and 8, page 7 and going into page 8 also shows the election history of the district from 2009 to 2021. It shows the district has had a number of elections that were important to maintaining and growing the academic success of the students and the community that the community has historically supported. The district has passed every election since 2009. The bottom of page 8 through page 11 provides the board with a brief analysis of the budget, including expenditures by function, carry forward into the new fiscal year, as well as student enrollment by year. A couple of things that management identified in this section is that the district spent 4% more on instruction than the average district in the peer group, as reported by the Arizona Auditor General office in 2021. Littleton also put 72.7% of every dollar spent directly into the classroom. You may also remember many discussions at board meetings regarding the aggregate expenditure limit in FY22. The AEL was ultimately waived by legislature for FY22, but not before much discussion on strategies districts would need to implement if the budget cuts were realized. Lastly, management reviewed the FY22 student enrollment data. The district saw a positive upward movement in enrollment in FY22 and a larger than expected increase in the 140th day enrollment. Management felt this would be a good sign for enrollment in the next fiscal year. The district uses many systems to maintain the level of efficiency, effectiveness, and communication between staff, students, and parents, and that's what is presented to you on page 12. I just wanted to highlight one of the programs the district began using in FY22, and that is My School Bucks. This program allows the district to provide a convenience to the parents by accepting electronic payments. Prior to this, the district was only able to accept cash and checks. Page 13 and 14 showcase some of the students the district celebrated in FY22, whether it was Kids at Hope students or students being highlighted for an exceptional performance at the science fair, spelling bee, math challenge, or art show. This is not an all-inclusive list of our amazing students, and the district strives to find ways to celebrate all students every day. Madam President, that was my overview of Chapter 6. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If the board doesn't have any, I'd like to invite Dr. Freeman to wrap up the presentation.
Questions on chapter 6? Yes, Mr.
I just got one.
Yes.
Sure.
You caught my hearing, only because I've got a couple of other grandkids that are in another district somewhere. Donations, the Arizona credit.
Tax credit?
Tax credit. Do we have availability of online donations now, or do we still have to do it with paper and what?
So, President Reyes, Member Nielsen, we do have the ability to provide tax credits online this year. Last year, we did not.
Okay, great.
We were piloting the My School Bucks program.
Okay,
I believe that we rolled that out this school year, and I do also know that the Arizona the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office has the ability to take payments on the behalf of the district electronically as well.
I just know over the years, as I've done that, it's become more cumbersome and then less and less and less to the point where you can get on there, put it on there, and even print out a receipt. You don't have to wait for snail mail to come to you and whatever else might be. So that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
The calendar year comes to a close, it might be. Thank you, Madam President. I think staff has made note of the questions that you had and a couple of suggestions, at least that I wrote down. Maybe there's some others. By way of closing in preparation for the summary, if there's anything of highlight or anything that we didn't cover in the report, because we were trying to narrow it to things that we thought were pertinent or impactful, that you think we may have missed, this is your opportunity to let us know what those are so we can prepare those. You know, there's a little bit of a challenge for us in that we moved the board meeting up a week to miss the election. Whatever it is we're doing, you know, we have this week to do that. We're thinking mostly cleanup and clarification, those kind of things for you. But we'll have that summary next week. If there's anything we missed or final thoughts, comments, or highlights, this would be the time to let us know what these are so we can put that summary together
I
in a
just
way
have
that
one.
meets all your needs. Go ahead.
Just going back to chapter 5, the meal service, because it was such a powerful program and impacted so many of our families, is there a data, like, is there a chart that we can include? I just think that would be really just more impactful to have something in there, because I know, I mean, you pointed out, so many stories, it really did touch a lot of families.
Yeah, I think even some of the screenshots from the one where she's going bye-bye bus.
Oh, yeah.
Was so cute. But I think we can probably quantify the number of runs and days and some things like that. We'll see what data, you know, we have that we can easily grab to beef that up a little bit. That's a great comment.
Yes. Mr. Nielsen?
Just mention of the marquee. Is there any way to determine how impactful that has been? Have parents or because they come to look at, register their kids for school, said, oh, I saw on the marquee, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, is there any feedback whatsoever as to, other than me stopping there and reading it and appreciating what you put up there, so.
I'm not aware that we've made any attempt to survey or quantify that. I mean, that's a great suggestion for future perceiver data, or for maybe even in our welcome center when parents come in. A lot of businesses, they'll say, how did you hear about us? We kind of assume people move into the neighborhood and maybe by word of mouth. We did a communication survey the one year the board studied it with 6 examples of way people prefer communication, hoping we could find the sweet spot, and it came out 1/6 for all of them. So it's a good question. We can think about putting that in. Mostly what we've gotten is, you know, what I would call qualitative data, which is I wish you would put on there XYZ. So the business rules we've had is for our programs and for our partners. We haven't set up any kind of fee for use yet. It's all been, you know, school, municipal, you know, other partners that we have. I think this week something went up about a fentanyl program the high school is going to have. You know, so public service, community service kind of things. The big idea that we've passed along that came from board members is having kids and families and parents up there. We do get their permission before we plaster their face up there, and most people have been really good about it, and it's been really well received. So that's anecdotal. Nothing that really that we've tried to quantify, but probably it's been up long enough, maybe we could start looking for some, you know, market reach data. I think, for instance, the thing on constant contact being opened and emails that get kicked back and things like that, the communication analytics that we're getting are getting better. But I think everybody's aware that people are just overwhelmed with communication, especially right now. I mean, when you are looking forward to ambulance chaser lawyer commercials again instead of Lerner and Rowe, where are you? Is that terrible? So, I mean, I think there are a lot of people just on communication overload. So, getting our message through. One of the things we're looking at is incentives and drawings and things like that might get people to participate more, working with the foundation for instance, every quarter that parents go into Parent View to check their kid's grade, that their name goes in a drawing for some kind of parent incentive, that families might respond to that, and then that would help with those metrics. So we've been kind of tossing around ways that we can increase the reach, the follow through, and certainly if members of the board have ideas about how we might survey that, or maybe we can give away prizes on the billboard, with like.
Well, I think as a wrap up to this, good job. It's not easy to condense everything we've done here in 6 chapters, but this is laid out really well.
Very nice.
Very nice, you could hand this to anyone that were thinking we don't do anything. You could hand this and go, wow. So nice job. We've really come a long way from a binder this big. So appreciate it, and good job in doing that.
You started with tire tread dust.
Yeah, that was crazy. It's like, wow, you were asleep by tomorrow. So very, very, very good job, and I really like the layout. It's just one quick shout out to the schools and all of the board members that went to Penny Power. And Penny Power is something, I don't know how we phrase it, but it's marquee worthy. And maybe it's just a message of kindness and sharing, whatever that looks like. I don't know if any of you finished it or did it. Did you have was it?
I loved it. It was so much fun.
Was it received well?
Yes, definitely more so in the younger grades than in the older grades.
Yeah, which is to be.
To be expected. And I can tell you, my kids came home and both gave me pennies, which was a little weird because I gave them the pennies to start with.
That's perfect.
It was perfect, and then and they're already, like, they raided my coin jar to take pennies to school the next day. So.
See, so it does. I did trace, and I would have to say, teachers, it was so positive. Their face, they were so shocked of the message. So I definitely would like to keep that going, and that's something we need to talk about, right?
We were hoping that maybe Mr. Nielsen would do Estrella Vista, since he lives by there,
Yeah.
and he's an engineer, and they're an engineering school. That
Oh.
we could get him over there.
Yeah.
It takes pretty much most of the morning, would you say? or-
Yeah, it took, I tried to hit every classroom and personally deliver the message. I got there at about 8:45. I left at 11:45. And because I couldn't find some, they were in specials or.
It won't be perfect. yeah.
But it, very well received.
We did fine arts in an hour and a half, and
Oh.
it was every classroom, but I was beat after.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm probably a little longer winded than you, so it took me a little bit
I'm
longer.
going to Clinton on Friday.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you went
I
already.
did, but
Oh.
I'm actually gonna be going on Friday and doing announcements with the students, and then I'll be going to the classes,
Oh.
and they're gonna put the penny on a card, and so.
Oh.
we're doing a little.
Yeah, it was very, it's something we need to keep going and hopefully get it out to the district, to communities. Yeah, oh, good for you. So anyway, just shout out, thanks,
If
this
you
is
have a day,
great.
let me know.
I appreciate it. Condensing. And with that, any other comments, things? I think that's all we have.
And we have one other item.
Oh, what,
The,
oh,
excuse me?
yeah, number 6.
Yeah, you said that you wanted in odd years to review your survey data. So we've
Yes.
provided that for you. I don't know how much time you want to spend. You have your board goals and progress but not achieved on most of those, if you pull that up. Oh, I'm sorry, I have my mic up and my face down. So and I think once again, coming out of the pandemic and with restrictions and everything, we did discuss this last year, and you wanted to keep your goals, even though it was going to be challenging, not to decrease them or not to increase them, but to maintain that. So we have met and we have discussed those, and the board has given input and made changes. On professional development, Amy really is the shining star. We didn't add names to the data. If you scroll down a little more, you'll see that we had one member who attended 4 events. The rest had one national or one regional event. So, you know, pretty much halfway there. On goal number 3, we held special meetings, strategic planning, decision-making, planning, and budgeting. This would be another meeting reviewing the data from last year, and at the regular October meeting, you review the annual financial report. We hope to next week, when we get together, have more information on school letter grades and maybe some more assessment data. You know, it's trickling out. Some of the data on that the board had for the superintendent on Sabres and Acadians and the things that you guys wrote a year ago next week. And then finally, in the advocacy, the board members attended, I think, between 1 and 4 events. One member met the goal quarter 3, one member met the goal in quarter 4. So I do think we need to, we don't get to pick those dates for those events. A lot of times there are conflicts. And we have changed the update calendar part where you can click on things to try to make things easier. It's not always working. Is that what that frown means? Is that just an upside down smile?
I haven't seen that yet, but I don't want to say that it's not working because maybe I haven't been looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were trying to just click to put it on your calendar. Is that what we were doing? Yeah.
I did download the Outlook app onto my phone and have my Littleton account tied to it. So
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
that will probably help us out.
Okay, what an effective strategy for board members to use to increase their,
I'm a Google person and everything is Google for me, and I just
yeah. So that's a quick review of your goals. I mean, there is a question turning into next year because the board decided they wanted to align the work on your goals, even though the governance calendar is a calendar year and the school calendar is a fiscal year. You all voted to track yourself on a fiscal basis with the rest of the school district. So when we start looking at goals for the district for next year, might also be a good time, if you think about now and between then, if the board wants to adjust any goals, or if you want to, Ada does, I think, a fantastic job of trying to track and follow and check minutes in your board reports and those kind of things to make sure you're getting credit for those. But we're awfully busy, and there's more of you than us. So, if we're missing anything, get with her and make sure that we have that. Because I think these are all worthy goals. There's no change in your survey data. What we did see, and so we would plan to have you retake that survey, you said, every 2 years. We did see a lot of growth in the board between the first and the second survey. And so I think just by continuing to be focused on it, it'll probably have a positive impact in the next measure as well. And that's just me introducing the item, Madam President. If there's any other discussion, feedback, or suggestions you guys want to have about, the board, the boardsmanship, or that kind of thing, turn it to you.
I think at this point, once you hear all of the perceiver data, for me, I need to just kind of sit back, read my goals again, and give it some thought. I don't know, anyone wants something other than that? No, it sounds like we just need to, and we understand that if we're changing them, it's critical to get it documented. So I think at this point, I would recommend we just table that. Let us think about where we've been, what we've gone through, COVID, where we're headed, and come back and see if we want to change any of those schools.
Madam President, I agree. I mean, I think we're all kind of in the post-pandemic, getting our footing again. The one thing that you and I and other members have talked to me about is, of course, you know, the social issues amongst our students, our families, anxiety, and even stress in the staff, and ways that we can support them. We came up with Penny Power. We've looked at a couple other programs to help support teachers. And so I would just say,
And maybe that's a focus, right?
yeah,
Spend a lot of time, I mean, budget is budget, there's only so much money, right? You can only give so much salary, and we were trying to think of something to just say thank you and encouragement to our teachers, because, you know, they've got, if you visit with them, they got a lot going on, right? You've got children who maybe have challenges at home, or one step away from homelessness themselves, or don't have the right tennis shoes. It's multitude of things, and I think letting teachers know when they're so burned out that they're important. I think we need to focus more on that, and I don't know what all that looks like. I know it can't always be money, but just a small thing like Penny Power, I could see it it really did impact their faces, their big grin, and they're like so surprised to get one, right? So maybe we think of that, and I wouldn't mind putting that as a goal for sure.
I think sometimes many tiny things are as good or better than one big thing.
Absolutely. We forget to do that in the world we live in, tiny things, right?
The other thing that President Reyes and I talked about is that a lot of the issues that are challenges for our kids, our teachers, and for our student achievement are swirling outside of the school, and especially with the you know, almost open hostility in politics today, the potential that the Capitol could be looking like a really tough political scene for K-12 education is member involvement in advocacy in the community, you know, outside of the school district. So I think those two things, the inside stuff, which we just touched on, and if there's outside stuff that people would want to get involved in, those would be two things to think about that discussions I've already had with members. So I don't have any ideas written down, but. Madam President, I think today, you know, you kind of have an update on the status. What I would suggest is at a meeting in January, between now and January, think about if there's things that you want to add, change, or delete, that would be an appropriate time, because that's really when we start looking forward into the year. The legislative session is going to kick off, so there'll be a lot of other things swirling around. Bills will already be dropping. We'll give you some idea of the tenure of the politics. I don't know about the AEL. We anticipate that it will pass again this year. We're not that hopeful on a permanent fix. And we expect members of the legislature to play politics with the issue again. You know, we really had hoped that that might not happen, but it's been pretty clear the governor's not interested really in addressing that. You know, if he seems to be quite content to leave it for the new executive. And a couple other issues that you know, he's not wanting to call a special session for. So it seems like we may be dealing with the next legislature instead of this legislature, which is what we were hoping. If we could have a special session with the members seated now versus potentially a more challenging legislature in January, that would be helpful. We're still working on that. We have tentative numbers, and the Department of Ed puts out their permanent calculation in November. I don't know if we'll have that on November 1st or not. y- we anticipate that they'll waive it. It's just a matter of what has to happen along the way. That could significantly impact our goals and what we're able to do, so.
I'll second that.
So I made the motion, you seconded, and so, any objections? No, we are adjourned at 7:37.